able to manage time. My name is Christine Apio, and I'm part of the gender-based violence area of responsibility team supporting the East and Southern Africa region. I work closely with Jessica Gorham, as well as my other colleague who is also on this call, one of the co-hosts for this event, Yvonne Flemmer. We are privileged to have 3 regional directors who will be officially opening this event, and they will be introduced soon by the GBV AOR Global Coordinator, Jennifer Chase. But just to mention that we have with us the Regional Director for UNFPA, East and Southern Africa region. You're most welcome to this event. We have the Regional Director for UN Women, East and Southern Africa. You're most welcome. And we have also the Regional Director for Tearfund, East and Southern Africa region. Today's event is about exploring gender's transformative approaches on engaging men and boys in humanitarian settings. While it focuses on East and Southern Africa region, we are privileged to have participants and presenters from across the different regions in the globe. So before wasting more time, I would like to invite our technical organizer, UNHCR, to provide some short briefing on how to navigate the WebEx platform so that everyone is informed. UNHCR ICT team, please. Gideon, the floor is over to you.
Morning, everyone. Trust that you can hear me well. So I'll just quickly share my screen and take you through a quick guide on how to maneuver through the meeting today. So I'm happy to see that most of you have joined. So this is the first slide on how people should have joined the meeting. I'm happy that all of you are able to join. So I'll move on to the next slide, which is how to maneuver through the meeting. So if you see at the bottom left corner of your screen, there's a small icon, globe icon. From there, you can select the language of your preference. We have English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Arabic. So if you check from this small icon, you can select one of the 4 languages. There is this button here, unmute button. So if you wish to speak, we request you to please raise your hand, then the host will give you or unmute you to speak. And once you've been unmuted by the host, you will have a pop-up screen on your end like this, which is on the bottom left corner of my screen, where you select unmute me for you to speak. If you wish to share your video, you can click on start video and we will be able to see you. We advise that if your internet connection is not good, please keep your video offline. As for the facilitators, there is this small icon here where you can share your screen and your presentations. We also have a small icon here, a round face, from where you can as well share your emotion or your reaction to what is happening on the platform. We have this icon here, which is the chat icon. You can click on it to speak to the facilitators and to the whole group. As for the moderators and co-facilitators, this is the screen you will receive when you click on share your screen. If you will be sharing a video or an audio file, you are requested to click on share computer audio so that we can all hear what you are sharing. Once you select the screen, then you can click on the share icon here at the bottom right corner of your screen. to stop sharing, you can hover over your screen at the top there, as you can see what I'm doing, and then click on stop sharing, and we will not be seeing your screen. So if you have any issues, please, you can put it in the chat or raise your hand, then we will be able to assist you. Thank you. Over to you, Christine.
Thank you, Gideon. I understand that Laureen is now, the technical issue she was facing has now been rectified. And I would be handing over to her as soon as possible. But I just want to quickly announce that this event is organized by the GBV Area of Responsibility, East and Southern Africa region, and co-hosted by a number of organizations, including CARE International, UN Women, UNHCR, UNFPA, and the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, SDC. Thank you, and over to you, Laureen.
Thank you very much, Christine, for holding forth, and all the participants. Apologies for my technical difficulties, but here we are. And on behalf of the GBVLR Eastern and Southern Africa, welcome to this symposium on engaging men and boys. We are very glad to have you here. So Christine has done the hard work of setting the frame for the conversation of the day, and thank you, Gideon, for that presentation on how to navigate WebEx. I'm sure a number of us, this is a slightly new experience, and we will be coming back and speaking to you on how to navigate the WebEx interface for those of us who are not too familiar with it. So according to the program, we are going to have a couple of sessions throughout the day. Some of them will be plenary sessions, and some of them are going to be going into parallel discussions. And before each session, we will be where you are required to navigate this interface again. We will be speaking to you, and we will be asking you, telling you how to move to, especially the parallel sessions. So as Christine said, my name is Laureen Wasonga. I am the Regional Advocacy Manager, Eastern Central Africa for CARE International, and I am the co-chair of this GBVAOR alongside Jessica Gorham, who will be speaking with you at some point later in the day. So for now, according to our programs, we are going to head into the next session, which is our opening remarks. And thanks, Christine and Gideon, for doing the housekeeping. And for the opening remarks, these are going to be facilitated. So let me put it this way. I'm the overall moderator for the day, but as I perform my role as a moderator, I will be supported by many other colleagues and partners who will be moderating different sessions and facilitating different sessions as we come and go. So for the next session, which is our opening remarks, this session is going to be facilitated by Jennifer Chase, who is a coordinator for the Global GBV Area of Responsibility. Just a little bit about Jennifer Chase to give us an idea who she is. Jennifer Chase is a global coordinator of the GBV Area of Responsibility with UNFPA as a lead agency and part of the Global Protection Cluster. She has been based in Geneva in this role for the last 6 years and has worked for the UNFPA in Sudan and the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in Colombia. And she has worked with the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe. She has worked with local NGOs and a number of international NGOs. Geographical scope, Latin America, Kosovo, Sudan. And she has a strong interest in ensuring the voices of women and girls are heard and recognizing their important role in the humanitarian sector. And Jennifer holds a master's in public health. Without further ado, participants, allow me to welcome Jennifer to facilitate the next session and introduce to us the participants of that session. Jennifer, please, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for your patience for waiting to start. I think it looks like a very exciting agenda, and I think all of us are going to learn a lot today. So I myself am looking forward to this event. So thank you all for joining today's symposium on gender transformative approaches to engaging men and boys in GBV prevention and response in humanitarian settings. I would like to begin by thanking the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation for their support to the GBV area of responsibility. The GBV AOR is now in a better position to explore the impact of gender-based violence has on boys and men, both in prevention and response. The SDC is funding a specialist in East and Southern Africa over the course of the next 2 years. In fact, that is Christine Appio, who spoke at the very beginning. And we're very grateful for her, for the support, for her to be able to work with our team. The purpose is to explore good practices and to help shape policy in this area. The symposium is one way that we are gathering information on best practices and, more importantly, highlighting the experiences of our member organizations. As many of you know, the GBV Area of Responsibility, led by UNFPA, is a global coordination mechanism for gender-based violence and emergencies, particularly in settings of displaced persons. The GBV AOR's team based in Nairobi is proud to be the standing chair of the regional GBV working group for East and Southern Africa, and gladly welcomed CARE International as this year's co-host. So thank you for joining us, CARE, not just today, but for co-hosting the regional working group. We are constantly trying to strengthen the capacity of our member organizations at country level and push our understanding and knowledge of the complexities of GBV and emergencies. Thus, we are pleased to welcome you to this unique symposium, and we're very excited about the turnout. As was mentioned, we have the honor to have 3 regional directors with us to also support the opening of the event. And I think the fact that we have the level of regional directors shows how important and unique this event is. So I really want to appreciate them taking their time in their busy schedules to open. So I would like to begin by introducing the regional director from UN Women, Dr. Maxime Houinato. He brings over 20 years of experience in gender equality. Prior to joining the East and Southern Africa Regional Office, Dr. Houinato served as representative for UN Women in Uganda, was Deputy Regional Director for Western and Central Africa, and UN Women representative in Mali. He also had a prior regional leadership role with Oxfam UK and other international NGOs in various locations. So I'm going to hand over to Dr. Maxime Houinato for the first opening.
Thanks very much. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Good. Dear panelists and participants joining today's event, all protocols observed. On behalf of UN Women, I would like to first appreciate the collaboration with the East and Southern African Regional GBV Working Group and other partners who have been involved in jointly organizing today's symposium. As we are all aware, the meeting is not the first and probably will not be the last of our efforts around the engagement of men and boys as part of ending GBV in humanitarian settings. It is, however, a very important moment to deepen our exchange and understanding of how to ensure that our efforts can transform the unequal power relations and social norms, which, as you all know, are unbalanced in humanitarian context. As the diversity of the partners in this virtual space illustrates, and as we will hear certainly today, there is a growing movement of organizations, a growing movement of advocates and institutions working to promote positive masculinities with significant experiences and lessons across the continent. This movement builds on the long history of advocacy and action by women's rights organizations and GBV advocates. And UN Women is pleased to be part of this movement, stemming from our historical relationship with the feminist and women's movement, as well as our investment in promoting positive masculinity over many years, many regions and settings, whether it's humanitarian/disaster, conflict, or development. You might recall, among other actions, that UN Women recently launched our 2022-2025 strategic plan, which has dedicated a standalone outcome to positive social norms, including engaging men and boys. You also recall, probably, that UN Women has launched our Generation Equality Forum, where the Women, Peace and Security and Humanitarian Compact and 6 Action Coalition were featured, and also include commitment to strategic engagement with boys and men to accelerate and the end of GBV. In this region particularly, these engagements involve multi-stakeholder partnership with government, with traditional leaders, civil society organizations, the media, private sector, and development partners. We work through these partnerships to, 1, nurture and strengthen capacity for individual journeys of transformation, as well as 2, contribute evidence, analysis, and advocacy for coordinated actions to influence institutional, social, and political change. These are our efforts to end violence against women and all forms of GBV, allow us to remain committed to ensuring our work to engage men and boys is grounded in and promotes accountability for women and girls. This means that we ensure that our efforts with men and boys, number 1, advance women and girls' leadership for ending violence against women. Number 2, are informed by and are also responsive to the experiences and recommendations of diverse women and girls' rights. And finally, recognize the significance and centrality of women's movement in this agenda. We also need to be focused on concrete results. For instance, in Uganda, home for the largest refugee caseloads in the continent, UN Women worked successfully with government and UNHPA to involve men in increasing women's participation in decision-making. The representation of women in the refugee welfare committees, for instance, moved from 10% to 52% in some settlements, like Adjumani and Yumbe. And it has a huge impact on how we address GBV. This attention to accountability is even more critical in humanitarian settings where women and girls, women's rights organizations, and women's rights defenders face barriers to organizing and are at greater risk of violence and exclusion. Dear colleagues, in this regard, let me share with you, or rather, share with us 3 recommendations. First, we must collectively identify our entry points for promoting gender transformative approach at different levels. This requires engagement with men and boys at different individual levels. Second, it is also critical that we acknowledge and address the multiple forms of discrimination that operate in both humanitarian and development settings, whether it's age, ability, identity, sexual orientation, etc. By addressing this intersectionality in countering patriarchal and toxic forms of masculinity, we can more effectively address GBV. And finally, we must ensure that involving men and boys does not become an opportunity for men to grab resources allocated or available to women, but rather that men should come with the resources, they should come with the power to change the lives of girls and women around them. I know that today's panel and panelist sessions will touch upon these issues and offer new opportunities for collaboration. As I conclude, I would like to pledge that UN Women will continue to support the following 3 dimensions. 1, substantially grow investment in support of gender equality. Number 2, co-create space for documenting and sharing experience of what works to promote positive masculinity. And finally, expand the call for action to transform patriarchal power structures in all spaces and platforms in which we engage. We call on all participants of this symposium to join us in these efforts and stand ready to continue to listen and collaborate for an end of GBV in humanitarian setting. Thank you very much, and thank you for all of the organizers and the collaboration that we start today is likely to produce more fruit. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your words. I just was getting stuck and not being able to unmute myself. So we are going to, due to time, move on to the regional director from UNFPA, Dr. Bannet Ndyanabangi, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. And we're very honored to have really, again, two regional directors with us today. So thank you both UN Women and also UNFPA. And to say that Dr. Bannet is the current regional director of UNFPA based in Johannesburg. He joined UNFPA in 2009, where he has served in various capacities, including as deputy representative in Nigeria and South Sudan, and as representative in Sierra Leone, Afghanistan, and Liberia. He has a wealth of experience garnered in various development and humanitarian settings. Dr. Ndyanabangi completed a degree in medicine at the University of Heidelberg, Germany. He also holds a diploma in medical specialties from the Institute of Tropical Medicine, a certificate in administrative managerial science from the University of Stellenbosch Business School, a master's degree in community health and health management, and has a PhD in public health. We are short on time, so I'm going to request also if you can keep your remarks brief, although I, just reading your introduction, know you have a huge wealth of information and knowledge that you could share with us, and over to you.
Thank you, moderator, for the warm welcome. Dear colleagues, UNFPA, as you know, the United Nations Reproductive Health Agency, is excited to be part of this very important regional event. UNFPA pursues 3 transformative results: ending preventable maternal death, ending unmet need for family planning, and very relevant to today's symposium, ending gender-based violence and harmful practices. As you may be aware, it is estimated that 70% of GBV occurs in humanitarian settings. And so it is indeed critical that we harness all mechanisms to prevent and respond to GBV in emergencies if we are to end gender-based violence. The East and Southern Africa region is faced with multiple humanitarian hazards, including conflict, climate change, food insecurity, and migration, among others. It is therefore imperative that we address the needs of the over 60 million people in need of humanitarian assistance in our region. Men and boys are central to the prevention and response to GBV. It is important that we engage them to promote positive masculinity, to support the achievement of sexual and reproductive health and rights, and to highlight the key role men and boys play in the prevention of gender-based violence. Data shows that most of the gender-based violence is perpetrated by men. Child marriages are usually by men. And even FGM is because there is a demand for circumcised women by men. So as men and boys, we are critical in ending this scourge. And as a father of 3 girls and a boy, and also a husband and a brother of 6 sisters, please count me in this fight. Today's symposium is thus aimed at achieving 3 objectives: facilitating knowledge sharing, increasing awareness on inclusive programming among GBV actors, and providing a platform to identify the key advocacy actions required to strengthen gender transformative prevention work with men and boys in the region. Our new strategic plan recognizes the criticality of meaningful engagement of men and boys to prevent and respond to GBV. East and Southern Africa, UNFPA has been accompanying national and continental efforts to promote positive masculinity. I wish to take this opportunity to commend the African Union Commission on the first ever men's conference on positive masculinity. This was organized at the end of last year by President Felix Tshisekedi of the DRC. As a follow-up to this important regional conference in February 2022, at the 8th session of the Africa Regional Forum on Sustainable Development, UNFPA and UN Women co-organized the side event on promoting positive masculinity as part of the advocacy efforts. This dialogue validated the importance of having African male champions taking concrete actions to end GBV in our continent. As the lead on the subclass on GBV, UNFPA is aligning its humanitarian program to pay attention to the needs and role of men and boys in the prevention and response to GBV, including ensuring that care for male survivors is also accessible and tailored to their needs. As we begin, I wish to commend our regional working group on GBV for this important initiative, our GBV global coordinator, and our regional team, UNFPA, UNHCR, UN Women, Care International, Tearfund, Men Engage Africa Network, and the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation for working together to co-host this symposium. Allow me to also appreciate all organizations in our diversity and everyone that has joined the symposium. The real value of today's engagement is that it fosters learning, experience sharing, and uptake of existing best approaches. I would like to conclude by reiterating the commitment of the UNFPA Eastern Southern Africa Regional Office and all our country teams to scale up the work and partnerships around positive masculinity and gender transformative approaches in the organization's work to eliminate gender-based violence in line with our transformative agenda. I look forward to a fruitful symposium ending with clear next steps and concrete actions to engage men and boys in preventing and responding to gender-based violence in humanitarian settings. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ndyanabangi, and I thank you for pointing out the positive work that's been done on masculinities in collaboration with other agencies and other organizations. I think the collaborations across the region and across the globe are of critical importance for us to get the good practices and to improve the communities for everyone. So thank you for pointing that out. I also want to appreciate that you mentioned male survivors, and just to say the GBV AOR with collaboration from all of our members did create a guidance operational piece on this to support the coordinators and looking at inclusion and referral pathways and to ensure services are available. So I hope that will be shared with the participants of this symposium. So thank you again for taking time from your busy schedule. And next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Beth Kangwana. She is the Executive Director of the Population Council in Kenya. Since 2018, she has provided global and national technical leadership and support to a breadth of research initiatives in the Pop Council Kenya's office, including efforts related to sexual and reproductive health and rights, HIV, and maternal, child, adolescent health and well-being. Her main interest is in evaluating multi-sectoral programs that are designed to improve the health and well-being of adolescent boys and girls. Aside from generating evidence on this topic area, she sits on the Kenyan Adolescent and School Health Technical Working Group, where she ensures that research is being taken up into policy and programming. Beth began her research career at Kemri Wellcome Trust Research Program in Kenya, a world-renowned regional institution known for excellence in health research. She has a doctoral degree in public health epidemiology and a master's degree in global health science from the University of Oxford. So over to you, Beth, for being our third opening remarks, and then we will move into the program. So thank you very much for joining today.
Greetings to everyone, and thank you so much for the introduction. Just a very brief background about who we are as Population Council Kenya. For those of you who don't know us, we seek to improve the well-being and health of current and future generations and to help achieve a humane, equitable, and sustainable balance between people and resources. Since 1993, we have given voice and visibility to the most vulnerable by increasing awareness of problems they face and offering evidence-based solutions and innovations that respond to the local social context. Population Council Kenya is a Kenyan registered entity and is also an affiliate of Population Council Incorporated, which is a regional and global leader in high quality program relevant research. So I wish, on behalf of the Population Council Kenya, to extend my warm and sincere congratulations to the regional GBV working group for East and Southern Africa on the convening of this symposium on engaging men and boys in GBV prevention and response in humanitarian settings. The very idea for this symposium, with its focus on men and boys, is transformative in itself, as taking the time to consider how men and boys are part of this GBV puzzle and can be part of its solution speaks to the very heart of gender transformative approaches. I am fully convinced that with the cooperation of the delegates here today, this symposium will be a complete success, achieving its ultimate goals of enhancing knowledge and experience sharing, along with collaboration and coordination among stakeholders, and enhancing understanding of evidence-based approaches for GBV prevention in humanitarian settings through male engagement. Addressing gender-based violence, including through the engagement of men and boys, is a priority for the Population Council Kenya. We recognize the importance of such engagement throughout the decades of our work, prioritizing the need to understand and effectively work with the various stakeholders in the lives of women and girls in order to successfully attend to a range of reproductive health issues. For the last 15 years, the Population Council Kenya's office has led the Africa Regional SGBV network set up to develop, test, and promote evidence-based GBV prevention and response models. Several tested models from this network, such as the Zero Tolerance Village Alliance intervention, were specifically developed to engage men and boys in prevention and/or response. And you can read more about this in the folder of resources that I understand will be shared with all attendees at the end of this meeting. From this and other models, we know that GBV prevention and response through the engagement of men and boys is possible and can be deeply impactful. From an assessment of the zero tolerance model, we know that it reduces the occurrence of physical intimate partner violence, or IPV, for men and women alike, sexual IPV for men, non-partner physical violence for men and women, and non-partner sexual violence for women. We also know that there are not nearly enough of tested and proven approaches in this area. This is all the more reason why the symposium is timely and critical, particularly with the heightening of the GBV and humanitarian settings in the face of COVID-19 and other disasters. So I would like to end by expressing my thanks and appreciation to the symposium organizers and all participants for their dedicated efforts and excellent contributions toward the objectives of the day. The Population Council affirms its full support for these endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with those three opening remarks, I think we can really launch and kickstart the panels that are coming up, which all look very exciting. And I am now going to hand back over to our moderator from CARE, and really want to say I hope that all of us are going to gain a lot. I have confidence that we're going to learn and hopefully then start with the implementation. So back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Thank you for moderating the sessions, and to the three speakers that gave the opening remarks. Thank you for setting the pace for the conversation for the day. So allow me, participants, to take us to the next session. Now that we have done the opening remarks, and we're getting into the substantive subject matter of the day. And our next session is a plenary session. This session is going to be facilitated by Sabine Nkusi, who is a gender and protection lead for Tearfund. So allow me to say a little bit about Sabine as she prepares herself to take over the presentation. Sabine Nkusi is a Gender and Protection Unit Lead at Tearfund and coordinates Tearfund's work on FGM, or cutting programs at global level. She's been a gender justice advocate for over 10 years with experience in leading projects addressing sexual and gender-based violence. And from 2014 to 2018, she coordinated the Secretariat for We Will Speak Out Coalition, a global coalition of faith-based organizations and individuals committed to ending sexual violence. Sabine is passionate about women and girls and the potential of the role of faith in ending violence against women and girls. Participants, allow me to welcome Sabine to facilitate the next session for us. Sabine, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lorraine, for the introduction. And greetings to you all, wherever you may be joining us from today. I'd like to firstly start by thanking the organizers, especially the regional GBV, a working group for East and Southern Africa. This has truly been a collaborative effort, and I certainly know that we at Tearfund have appreciated being part of the planning and the organizing of this symposium. So thank you very much and well done. So it is really my pleasure this morning to introduce our two speakers for this plenary session. So our two speakers are Delphine Brun and Glory Makena. So they both bring great insight and experience into the subject of this symposium today. They will each present to us for about 15 minutes. So if I may introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is Delphine Brun. So Delphine, a little bit about Delphine and her background. So Delphine is a senior Inter-Agency GenCap Advisor based in Cameroon. Delphine specializes in protection and gender in conflict-affected countries, with particular focus on West and Central Africa. Delphine's presentation today will explore why addressing the needs of adolescent boys and men affected by crisis is beneficial to women and society at large, with a focus on Cameroon's Northwest and Southwest humanitarian crisis. Delphine, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. Could you just confirm you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you. And can you see my presentation?
We cannot see a presentation. Perhaps the technical team can help us in that.
Okay. I hope you can see it now. Yes, so I would like to talk to you about the example of the crisis in the northwest and southwest of Cameroon, which is very much a protection crisis. Just to give a bit of background, over the past 5 years, the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon have been racked by violent clashes between pro-independence groups and Cameroon's army, with 1 million people displaced and 2 million in need of urgent humanitarian assistance. And so the reason why I focused on these two regions in order to conduct a gender analysis on the situation of men and boys is because while there is data available on the way girls and women are affected by the crisis, there was only patchy information on how adolescent boys and men were affected. And the reason why I would like to give this example is because I believe it echoes it's quite similar to other experiences in protection crises and how men and boys are affected. I would just like to stress that this analysis is not intended to compare who would be the most vulnerable, and even less to minimize the discrimination faced by women and girls in that context. What is the situation of men and boys in these regions? Adolescent boys and young men face specific threats and circumstances that leave them vulnerable. It means being more exposed to a targeted armed attacks with more risk of injury or death directly related to the situation. Men and young men remain the primary victims of recorded protection incidents, representing between 85 and 95% of those who are exposed to torture, inhuman treatment, theft, extortion, arbitrary or unlawful arrest or detention. And so what does it mean? It means that as they are the ones usually expected to fight, they are the ones more directly at risk of injury. As they are the ones who are supposed to be fighting, they are also perceived by both sides to the crisis as threats and suspected of being spies, and women are much less confronted with this problem. Adopting a neutral stand is impossible. Remaining silent can be seen as a sign of complicity. Revealing information can lead to revenge. And the lack of identity documents puts them at particular risk. And all these risks combined greatly affect their mobility. I would like to emphasize the fact that it means that they are also exposed to gender-based violence. GBV is usually committed by other men, be it armed men who use sexual violence as a way of emasculating male civilians, or used also by individuals who exploit them and take advantage of their vulnerability, particularly when those are displaced. Organizations have anecdotal evidence of GBV perpetrated against male survivors. It's 14% at least of recorded cases of GBV that concern the male population. But it's also interesting to note that this quantitative evidence is seldom accompanied by an analysis of how the GBV services could be better tailored to address the needs of the male survivors. And I would like to emphasize that in Cameroon, as is the case in quite a lot of other contexts, prosecuting perpetrators of GBV is very difficult because Cameroon's penal code does not include rape against the male population, does not provision for it, and lawyers must use the term of forced homosexuality as an element in their legal proceedings, with all of the attendant stigma in a country in which homosexuality is criminalized. So I'm giving you some quotes that highlight the consequences this protection crisis has on the male population. In this situation, many adolescents, boys and men, have either made the choice to fight, to hide in the forests, or to resort to exile. Those who do not flee have often reduced their economic and social life to a minimum, restricting their movements and avoiding gatherings. Moving around to obtain the necessary income, allowing to play the socially expected role of provider for the family, has often been rendered impossible. And it's also further complicated by attacks on education that further reinforces the isolation and lack of prospects of adolescent boys and men. And as these quotes highlight, with no immediate solution to the current crisis, many key informants indicate that the male population feels depossessed of control over its life and future, with many consequences in terms of addiction, in terms of depression, but also, as I will just discuss in just a moment, in terms of domestic violence within the home. The crisis has affected the ability of men to conform to dominant masculine norms, in particular to play the role of head of household as provider and protector of the family. The people I interviewed as part of this analysis indicate that there is a feeling of loss of identity that leads to depression, but that also increases domestic violence as a means for men to assert or to reassert their status. Men's lack of mobility under these circumstances has caused significant gender role reversals. While men are quartered around the house, women and children who are less likely to be arrested take on new responsibilities. Women play a more important economic role, but this change in the distribution of roles does not mean that they have genuinely been empowered. It more comes with a heavier workload and with the fact that since they go where men used to go, they are also exposing themselves a lot more to gender-based violence. So how does the humanitarian community understand and addresses this situation? As I said, the attention to the vulnerability of adolescent boys and men has been patchy. And there are a combination of elements that explain this lack of recognition of how the two halves of the population are affected. There's first what I could describe as the Titanic effect. There is a common perception that females, children, and groups with specific needs are systematically most in need due to gender discrimination, age, or disability. And this also combines with the idea that these men, often young, are capable and strong enough to cope with the situation unaided. There is also the view that supporting men and boys comes at a risk, since the male population is suspected by both sides to despise or to be involved in the conflict. Providing them with specific assistance may cause the organization to be suspected, and so we have different cases of this situation in these two regions. There is also the concern that assisting boys and men risks inadvertently to put money into the hands of combatants. And we see that this question does not arise, of course, when targeting women. All this combines with the view that donors will be more interested in funding interventions that target the female population. There is also the use of a status-based categorization, and this doesn't help recognizing and addressing the vulnerability of adolescent boys and men, since quite often they are not part of the categories that are typically identified and prioritized by humanitarian actors. All this combines with the fact that many services, I'm thinking particularly of specialized health services and GBV services, have been designed with the female population in mind. And this specific design constitutes an additional barrier for men and adolescent boys to access assistance. I reviewed different project proposals that were written for the Northwest Southwest, and just to give you an illustration of this, we see that 42% of the project proposals are going to discuss about the implications the crisis has on women and girls, but it drops out to 8% when it comes to discussing how this affects adolescent boys and men. And so the review of the protection project proposals developed for the Northwest Southwest also illustrates that there is only a very, very small proportion of projects addressing the needs of male survivors, despite the fact that they are 14% of the recorded cases. As I said in my introduction, the aim is not to identify who is more at risk or who should be prioritized by humanitarian assistance, but what is striking is the fact that the failure to recognize that males are particularly vulnerable, and the lack of prioritization of their needs has implications for women and for society at large. When men are arrested, when men are killed or forced into displacement, women are also victimized, with more burdens and responsibilities, and with more frontline activities that put their own safety at risk. And likewise, when men who are unable to fulfill their role of resource provider do not receive psychosocial assistance or do not have access to vocational training or income generating activities, they find themselves in a situation that leads to addictions, frustration, which can create or exacerbate protection risks, including GBV, for the community and for women in particular. And so this neglect is not just potentially disastrous to men and boys themselves, but also indirectly to the security, resilience, and cohesion of the broader society. I would like to end just by emphasizing the need to ground the humanitarian response on contextual evidence rather than on preconceived ideas of who's most affected. It's important to recognize that the life of men and women interrelate, and that not addressing men's vulnerability in protection crises also has effects on women and girls. And so finally, for the GBV services, it will be important for GBV case workers to not only focus on the violence against women and girls, but also be fully trained on how to handle violence against adolescent boys and men, even if they constitute a minority of reported incidents. And I will stop there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Delphine, for sharing with us the context of Cameroon and also highlighting the specific threats faced by men and boys, and really providing some key recommendations on how do we move forward. Thank you. So if we may go to our next presenter, our second presenter is Glory Makena. Hopefully Glory is online. So if I may give a little bit of background on who Glory is. So Glory is the Women Protection and Empowerment Technical Coordinator for IRC in South Sudan. And in the past 9 years, Glory has been working in GBV programming across across different humanitarian and development contexts, where she managed coordinated GBV response, prevention, and socioeconomic empowerment interventions with a major focus on the safety and well-being of women and girls. So Glory presentation today will be on keeping accountability to women and girls, exploring a feminist perspective in engaging men and boys in the prevention of gender-based violence. Glory, you're welcome.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. My name is Glory Makena. I work as the Women Protection and Empowerment Technical Coordinator for the International Rescue Committee in South Sudan. My presentation today will look at why and how we can be accountable to women and girls. I look forward to sharing some of the concrete ways we can be accountable to women and girls in prevention programming, and especially transforming our societies to promote gender equality and end violence against women and girls. Sorry, that's almost the last slide. Could you kindly go to the second slide? Yes, next slide, please. Thank you. Being accountable to women and girls means to me that women and girls are given the center stage and must be leaders within our GBV programming. This is because they know, they feel, and are the center of our programming. Without their voices and choices from all walks of life, we cannot transform inequality based on the subordination and silencing of these voices. Therefore, quality gender transformative programming is only possible when we are actively accountable to the women and girls. We can't know what is happening in the communities we serve or how our programming actions are affecting the girls and the women that we are working with without their insights and without ensuring the decisions making is at the heart of every program design as well as the implementation decision that we make. In addition to that, women and girls are the ones who feel the impact of our programming. Perhaps this could be hidden in the backlash from the intimate partners, or a wave of community resistance and rising austerities, or through the support they receive from friends and families to access care and support when they experience violence. The results of our programming are acted upon by the bodies and the souls of the women and girls in our communities. And thirdly, our women and girls are central to our programming, and we must work hard to create safe space and shift power to them within our prevention programming. The importance of accountability to women and girls and maintaining a feminist approach to engaging men and boys is widely acknowledged in our GBV practitioner space. And that's why you find our current gender transformative approaches have been largely informed by the feminist approach. In 2019, the GBV AOR launched the minimum standards for GBV in emergencies programming. That was after years of deliberate consultations and discussions across the world, and we as the GBV community agreed that women and girls participation and empowerment is foundational to all our GBV work. These foundational standards of women and girls participation and empowerment underpins and is necessary to achieve all the other standards. This implies that whether we are providing GBV response services such as case management and psychosocial support at the women and girls safe spaces, or mobilizing communities to transform systems and social norms, or assessing, monitoring, and evaluating our programs, women and girls must be involved, listened to, setting the agenda, and deciding the priorities of our work. How can we be accountable to women and girls? So when we talk about accountability to women and girls in the GBV programming, especially the prevention part. Maintaining time and space for women and girls to meet and discuss by themselves is critical component to keeping GBV programming on track. For example, within the Engaging Men Through Accountable Practice, which is the ILC flagship GBV prevention program, women meet first to explore how GBV is affecting their lives and as well as the lives of their girls in the communities, and bring these voices together to inform the men's group, which are then formed. The voices are the pillars that hold and guide the discussion throughout the 16 weeks men group sessions will be held. The women and girls safe spaces, in addition, continue to inform GBV programming, providing critical feedback of any unintended harmful consequences and where positive change are occurring as a result of our prevention work. When male activists are being abusive at home, or when community leaders are not retaining or adhering to their commitments in the communities, the security of the safe spaces provides an opportunity to women and girls to raise concerns and issues which are then later addressed through the prevention work. Violence against women and girls takes so many forms. As girls experience childhood, adulthood, and old age, and men and boys can play important roles in every stage. Therefore, accountability to women and girls means engaging men and boys as peers and allies to women and girls across the life cycle. There are so many opportunities to engage men and boys through gender transformative parenting programs, sexual and reproductive health, skills building in schools, bringing together young boys and girls, as well as peer supporters and community activists to challenge harmful norms in schools and at the communities. For example, one of the gender transformative parenting programs that ILC has been utilizing is the Girl Shine curriculum, which is tailored for empowering adolescent girls in humanitarian context. This curriculum has a unique approach in terms of supporting both the male and female caregivers, where we have an entire package that is dedicated for the male caregivers to provide them with necessary skills and information as well as knowledge that will support them to fully ensure that their girls are empowered and they safely navigate through adulthood. Another form of gender transformative programs that we can embed in our prevention activities is the Gender Discussion Groups series, which is a component of the Economic and Social Empowerment Model. The Gender Discussion Group series brings together partners or spouses in structured discussion series where they address gender norms, especially around household economy. And also in addition to that, it provides the partners to identify, explore, and learn and practice non-violent conflict resolution strategies, as well as brainstorm ways to work together geared to ensuring gender equalities in their families as well as in the communities. Boys who can be engaged as allies in childhood and adolescent offer little hope for a different world where girls can grow into women with positive relations with boys as classmates, friends, colleagues, and later on as partners. As part of our evolution of the Engaging Men Through Accountable Practice approach, the ILC is currently strengthening the gender transformative approach to engage young and older adolescent boys to prevent violence against women and girls. This we will explore later on today during the session under EMAP, where we'll look at it more broadly. Still on how we can be accountable to women and girls, we can only be accountable to women and girls when we engage them in their diversity and ensure men and boys understand the lived realities of women and girls in all their communities. Our accountability mechanisms need to include diverse women and girls to ensure we are able to design and implement GBV programming which meets and addresses their needs and priorities. Utilizing this intersectional approach when engaging men is very critical, and therefore engaging men and boys in transformative gender programming must consider the same intersecting inequalities to ensure all parts of our communities are reached in prevention work. Working with leaders of social change movements can also be an important avenue to increase the space for women and girls in those movements. Accountability work must therefore apply the feminist intersectional approach, which Kimberly Crenshaw originally outlined in her writings. I quote, "If we are not led by and listening to women and girls in all their diversity, then we are not being successfully accountable," which I definitely concur. Allow me to share our experience when it comes to the engagement of men and boys. It is challenging to create the space when men and boys explore together the depth and breadth of violence against women and girls, or the violence women and girls have been experiencing. It's hard and can be overwhelming to keep looking at how women and girls have continually to negotiate through unsafe communities, unsafe homes, unsafe schools, and workplaces. Men and boys find it hard to take an honest look at how they contribute to and benefit from an equal society where being male privileges and protects them. A natural reaction to this discomfort is distraction. The experience of discomfort creates resistance from men and boys and a natural desire to create distraction and look away. Therefore, without accountability to women and girls, engaging men and boys in gender transformative programming can veil away from a focus on violence against women to other topics and experiences. Additionally, engaging men and boys in gender transformative programs can quickly lead to replication of male dominance. When walking the talk of GBV prevention programming, men and boys need to remain in a position of listening, learning, and open to the feedback that they are receiving from the women and girls. Of critical importance as a wrap up in maintaining a feminist and women rights-driven focus to GBV programming is working as part of a wider community rights movement and ensuring resources lead to women-led organizations. Accountability mechanisms through established women groups and networks are fundamental to quality GBV programming. We all know that we must recognize the inherent strengths and capacities in the communities where we work, and we need to transform humanitarian funding systems to ensure resources accompany our respect for women and girls on the front line of GBV prevention and response. As a wrap up, I acknowledge how hard this work is and how being compassionate and empathetic with women, girls, boys, and men is an important part of our work together. We can only engage in solidarity and support to create together a safe and a more equal world. Engaging with men and boys in the prevention of gender-based violence is necessary, can be effective, and can have a positive, transformative impact for the lives of women and girls, but only when we are accountable to them. Thank you for your time today, and I look forward to hearing from the rest of the speakers and the participants to continue this wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Glory, for really highlighting to us why we need to be accountable to women and girls as we engage men and boys in the prevention of gender-based violence, and really giving us some specific examples and a good practice as to where or how we might start to do that. So thank you very much. And I would like to really thank our two presenters for this session. And I hope that this opening session has given you a taste of what to look forward to for the rest of this symposium. Thank you very much. Lorraine, over to you.
Thank you, Sabine, for the excellent moderation. And thank you, Delphine and Glory, for giving us the different approaches that you are using in your line of work, but at the same time highlighting the unity of purpose on what it is the symposium is about today. So I'm going to move us to the next session of the program, which is a plenary session. And just like the previous, it is a roundtable discussion, sorry. And just like the previous session, this session will have its own facilitator. And in this case, it will be Astrid Helen. Astrid, I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. And Astrid is the Deputy Coordinator of the Global GBV AOR. A little bit more about Astrid. As I said, she holds the position of the Deputy Director of the AOR, and she also manages the regional GBV AOR technical support teams, the REGA, as they call it. And the GBVAOR, as you've previously been told, sits in the UNFPA Humanitarian Office in Geneva. Astrid has more than 15 years of experience from humanitarian work, including working at the headquarters of the GenCap project. In Syria, she coordinated UNRWL's multi-sector emergency response for Palestinian refugees from Iraq. In Jerusalem, she worked on tertiary education reform and headed the Secretariat for Aid Coordination for the Palestine Authority and the international community. I guess what we are trying to say very elegantly is that Astrid is the best person to coordinate this session, the roundtable discussion. And participants, please allow me to introduce Astrid. And Astrid, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine. And with those words, I'll try to be a good facilitator and show that I'm well placed. Thank you so much. And good morning and to everyone. I think most of you are based in the East Africa region, and in any case, welcome to everyone. A big thank you to Christine Apio, I have to say, because with Yvonne, they've been relentlessly now preparing in the background for the last days and helping us all get ready and taking that leadership. A big thank you to everyone in the GBVAOR working group and to all the facilitators and presenters. I do think this is a very exciting symposium, and I do think it's very relevant with the increased needs for GBV response and prevention that goes together, right? I wanted to say a big thank you also to Delphine Brun. I do think the points that you raised around the needs of especially maybe adolescent boys and youth and how that impacts women and themselves and the important violations that they are. I do think it's important in humanitarian response that we see people within their communities and that we see have an inclusive approach around needs and the prevention. And I also very much appreciated the points that were raised from Gloria around accountability and making sure we always keep these intersecting inequalities in mind and that we remain accountable to women and girls. So I'm very happy to be here. We're now moving into a panel discussion with 5 panelists, and we're not starting ahead of time. So with this, maybe just to say one more word around the AOR. So we do have in our strategy a much stronger focus on inclusion of all survivors. We've emphasized the needs of women and girls, but we do really want to do more in terms of inclusion of all survivors. And I think that does link, as Delphine was saying, around including and recognizing the needs of everyone as we also work on the prevention to improve the situation for women and girls. So you are now going to hear from several colleagues from the region and go more in depth. Most of you are in the region. There's also some experience to be shared from Asia. So the first panelist is Ms. Santa Lamunu, who's a GBV officer with UNHCR Uganda. Ms. Santa is the GBV officer who's been working for 14 years in GBV prevention, mitigation, and response. And she also brings important expertise from her role in providing technical assistance on the SASA Together, which is a behavioral change methodology to prevent violence against women that has gained a lot of attention over the last years. So, Ms. Santa, I also hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. The question I have for you is, what are the benefits of engaging men and boys in GBV prevention and response in humanitarian settings? Over to you, Santa.
Thank you very much, moderator, and thank you, everyone. Maybe before I just go straight to the benefits, I just want to acknowledge the fact that our different presenters that came really set a very good platform for us, even pointing out on some of the key benefits that comes out. I would want to acknowledge and applaud the women from around the globe for the efforts they've made that has brought us this far. If today we see engaging women, engaging men and boys in GBV prevention and response, it is because of some of these powerful moves that women took a lot of confidence on. Indeed, men's use of power in their relationship is consistently associated with traditional notions of masculinity. Those behaviors that people feel people feel is appropriate for being a man, to be called a real man in the community. So, and you'll find that this negative masculinity is greatly associated with power. And it is about power and the use of negative power that you see that men and boys becomes the top on the list of alleged perpetrators of GBV around the globe, and most especially in humanitarian settings where we work. It is therefore key to note that male involvement and engaging men is an intentional work to promote their role in confronting the transformation of the privileges, the use of power that they have been in for quite long. So I would now go ahead to share my own experience in this humanitarian setting on how engaging men and boys in different capacities have been beneficial. When we engage men in these transformative ways, we get various benefits that helps to promote power, balancing power and gender equality. One of it is that when we engage men and boys get a safe space where they can adequately begin to question their negative masculinity. Engaging men and boys give them the chance to be able to question their gender, the use of power, and the privileges in their lives. This, when you look at the general discussions that we have, if we do not engage these men and boys, then they would not have this safe space to engage. Many times, men and boys look at this as an attack on their comfort zone. People have lived for so long with these norms in which they have been socialized. And these are the norms that continue to create a very strong foundation
Santa, I think we lost you. Do you hear me, Santa?
I think we lost her, Astrid. I can't hear her either.
Yeah, that's a shame because she was going very well. And she had important things to say, but that's the way it goes, right? So, Santa, unless you hear me in the next couple of seconds, I think we're going to move maybe on. What do you think? Ah, there you're back. We just lost you, Santa, for half a minute or 15 seconds. So maybe you want to go back a little bit in what you were saying.
Thank you for alerting. I was bringing the point that engaging men and boys gives them a structured safe space where they can be able to reflect on their masculinities, reflect on the power at their disposal and their privileges. Now, without this engagement of men and boys, you will find that they would not have an opportunity to pause and reflect. So when we engage them, they get this opportunity to pause and reflect on these key issues of power and how to use power positively. I was giving an example that in Uganda, there is this saying that man to man. It is because of how our societies have socialized our young ones. Now, men can only listen very carefully and reflect when men talk to them. Boys are more ready to accept and reflect on what fellow men tell them. So one of the key advantages of engaging men and boys is that we are giving them a safe space, where a very structured safe space, where it gives them an opportunity to pause, because they listen to a voice, a man's voice, who is questioning the social norm, who is questioning the use of power. So they continue to get this reflection. It is only when we engage men and they keep reflecting, that is when they would begin to start on the journey to positive behavioral change and the journey to balancing power in their relationships. Another thing is that engagement role model behaviors that does not support violence. I would give an example of men who are GBV community activists. GBV community activists. You'll find that because these men have been engaged and continues to be engaged. Is it clear, Ray? I'm hearing some background noise.
There's a little bit of background noise, but we hear you well.
Thank you. So
sounds
this
like someone is drilling up us. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. So these men, because they have been engaged, because they have questioned their social norm, because they have realized that there is need for positive masculinity, their behaviors have changed. They have started on a journey to change. Now, their neighbors, their friends, some of them are leaders. When people see them, they provide role models in the community. So they role model behaviors that are non-violent, and people begin to see the benefit of non-violence in their lives, in their relationship. And you'll see that other people, even when we are discussing with community members, community point them out. The family of John, I admire the way they live. This is strong enough, because other people already get to them. How are you doing it? How have you made it this far? It is not easy, but the role modeling part of it is great to admire. So men need to be constantly engaged so that we can get these ones who will role model to infect others with non-violence in their lives and in their relationship.
Thank you, Santa. I am so sorry, but I realized I'm hearing from the organizers that they do want to have a break at 10 or 11 Nairobi time. So I'm sorry, Santa, but I think then to give some time to the other speakers as well, I'm going to stop you here. And thank you so much for reminding us around or to highlighting the safe space and also for men in having these discussions and the big impact it can have. Thank you so much. Laureen, thanks. Just to make sure, so we have actually 20 minutes for 4 people, or can we go a little bit over time?
We have 20 minutes, basically to the top of the hour. Then we go on break. Yes.
Okay. In this case, I'm going to be even briefer in the introduction of participants because I really want to hear the panelists so that I really hear what you want to share. It does mean we need to be brief. You have like four or 5 minutes for each intervention. Donc so I'm very happy to welcome Ms. Aziz Suleiman, who's the regional coordinator for SDC in Burundi. And the question to you, Aziza, is around the challenges and gaps in engaging men and boys in prevention and response. Donc, quels sont les défis et les lacunes quant à nos efforts d'impliquer les hommes et les garçons dans la prévention du VBG dans les crises humanitaires? Over to you, Madame Aziza. Vous êtes là?
Ok, merci. J'ai reçu la question, à moins que je me trompe, je pense que la question porte sur les défis habituels en lien avec la situation humanitaire, hein. C'est-à-dire comment est-ce qu'on prend en charge les survivants hommes. Est-ce que c'est ça la question?
Oui, c'est sur les efforts d'impliquer les hommes en général, mais allez-y, on vous écoute et on va être ravis d'apprendre. Merci, Madame Aziza.
D'accord. Alors, effectivement, il y a des défis habituels en lien avec la situation humanitaire, hein. Lorsqu'on est dans une situation humanitaire, on est dans une situation de fragilité, de sécurité aussi, et il y a aussi l'absence des services ainsi que des programmes qui sont plus axés pour sauver des vies, axés sur les urgences. Alors, les grands défis, le premier défi, c'est d'abord les informations, les données. C'est très difficile d'avoir des données sur un sujet aussi difficile que les violences sexuelles et encore plus tabou en ce qui concerne la violence sexuelle des hommes. C'est encore quelque chose de très tabou et les gens ont peur, surtout les hommes, d'être étiquetés ou catalogués comme personnes vivant avec, comme personnes qui ayant subi la violence sexuelle et pourquoi pas, malheureusement, ils ont aussi peur d'être catalogués comme homosexuels. Alors, nous avons aussi un grand défi, c'est les stéréotypes. Les stéréotypes et les normes sociales en lien avec les genres et plus spécifiquement les attentes que l'on a envers les hommes et les garçons. Pourquoi est-ce que je dis ça? Parce que les garçons et les hommes sont socialement considérés comme des hommes forts. Ils sont socialement considérés comme des personnes sans peur. Ils doivent toujours montrer de la force, chercher du respect et toute situation qui peut les mettre dans qui peut leur causer de la honte ou de l'humiliation va les pousser à se cacher, à ne pas chercher de l'aide. Et donc, ça, c'est un défi qui fait que nous n'avons pas dans nos programmes beaucoup des personnes ou des hommes, des survivants hommes qui viennent. Un autre défi important, c'est la protection en lien avec les hommes. Souvent, malheureusement, la plupart des survivants que nous recevons dans nos programmes sont des jeunes garçons, parfois des enfants, et dans les sociétés ou dans les zones d'intervention, les parents et les communautés ne mettent pas en place un dispositif pour protéger les garçons, parce qu'on considère que les garçons n'ont pas besoin de la même protection, en tout cas d'une protection. Excusez-moi, on dit que vous ne m'entendez pas.
Moi, je vous entends bien, Madame Aziza.
Ah, d'accord. OK. Alors, je continue. Donc, le système communautaire de protection n'est pas adéquat ou on ne se focalise pas trop sur la protection des petits garçons ou des garçons en général parce qu'on pense qu'ils ont moins besoin de protection contre les violences sexuelles. Et ça, dans les situations humanitaires, on se focalise plus sur les filles. Les communautés ou les familles se focalisent plus sur les filles que sur les garçons. Autre chose aussi qui est un défi, c'est que les hommes ont très peu confiance dans les prestataires des services parce que, défi suivant, le système de prise en charge est inadapté pour recevoir des survivants masculins. Donc, nous n'avons pas souvent des orientations stratégiques, des directives et même des compétences pour soigner les hommes. Ce ne sont pas les mêmes compétences qu'on développe pour soutenir les survivantes femmes que pour soutenir les survivants hommes. Peut-être dans les groupes ou les questions, on va y revenir. Et quelque chose aussi qui bloque, c'est la peur des représailles. Parce que nous sommes dans un contexte humanitaire où les gens sont parfois dans des situations d'insécurité. Lorsqu'on va se plaindre des violences sexuelles qu'on a subies, il y a des risques de représailles. Et c'est ça qui fait que aussi les hommes ne viennent pas, sans oublier d'autres éléments. En écoutant les hommes, ils parlent aussi des représailles d'ordre fétichiste, c'est-à-dire qu'ils ont peur puisque les questions sexuelles touchent beaucoup à l'intimité, mais aussi à la spiritualité. On va en parler peut-être un peu plus tard. Ils ont peur aussi des représailles de ce côté-là. Ayant eu une relation forcée, intime avec quelqu'un, certains considèrent qu'ils ont directement établi un lien spirituel avec cette personne qui a abusé d'elle. Et c'est ça ce que nous avons dans écouter les hommes qui sont venus pour chercher de l'aide dans nos projets. Merci.
Merci, Aziza. Thank you so much, Aziza, and also for highlighting the needs of male survivors. In particular, I think you're...
Right, my little sausage. Have a wonderful day. I love you very much. Yeah, I miss you too.
Someone who's speaking on the line without being aware. Thank you.
2 days in a row.
Sarah Cornish, you're speaking on the line. Okay, she's muted. Sorry. Aziza, a big thank you also for highlighting, which I think is common in several contexts, that maybe that male boys also have a higher rate of abuse when they're children, and that's also something that contributes. And in particular, the points that you made around male survivors, their safety, the security, and the confusion around what does it mean? Is it linked to homosexuality? Is it not? Etc. And all these prejudice, which I think actually goes back to our duty as GBV responders to have an open mind and to better understand that abuse and sexual violence against men does not actually have a link to homosexuality, but it's often seen as that in legal frameworks. So thank you so much, Aziza. And I'll move on to the next panelist. So I'm happy to introduce Mr. Ronald Ogal from CARE Uganda. And I'm so sorry to impose like this, but you have like 3 minutes. So yeah, we look forward to hearing what you have to say. Over to you.
All right, thank you so much. And I want to take this opportunity to utilize my 3 minutes to share how masculinity manifests in the refugee context, but also how it links to gender-based violence. And for me, I think Delphine did for me justice when she presents, and she tackled exactly what I really look at when you look at the notion of masculinity in a humanitarian setting. Of course, like we all know of masculinity, it's something that is, the notion is in transition and it manifests into different forms, and it's even worse in the humanitarian settings where you find people are in some kind of identity crisis, uncertain which notion of masculinity they subscribe to, whether it should be hegemonic, subordinate, marginal, or complacent form of masculinity. But again, when you look at crisis presents a big challenge to men and boys, where there's a big question, it's a big blow to their notion of masculinity. People are struggling to identify they're in some kind of crisis to see which sort of men should they identify with. And it's even worse with the male survivors of violence who have gone through cases of rape, whether they should still identify themselves with men but also there are questions around the reference groups and the social sanctions where men are in some kind of dilemma, which kind of men should they identify themselves with and which kind of sanctions they look at this. But when you look at crisis, of course, there's a big change in the gender roles, especially women takes in additional role, additional burden, which traditionally is supposed to be the role of men. So meaning that, of course, the role of men are also put into some kind of crisis because their identity, the being a real man, is being questioned because they are not able to play that socially ascribed role where they're supposed to be the provider, the protector, and all this. So this somehow puts men in some positions of vulnerability where, of course, they are struggling to fit into the social kind of identity where, of course, this vulnerability comes into that where they have lost their source of livelihood, they have been exposed, like they have poverty, they have unemployment, displacement. And these kind of situations bring men into some kind of a dilemma. They try to reconstruct, to regain the power that they have. And many of us who've been in this kind of setting, you see men trying to identify a new strategies to cope. An example, I work in the refugee settings where you find the issues of selling of food ration, where a man tries to sell the food ration to get cash where he can control. The cash he can control, of course, give him power to be still the head of the family, where psychologically he's in control of the family, where people will come to him and ask him for some kind of assistance. And you find that's a big challenge to men. But of course, when you look at the issues, men struggling also to undergo this kind of emotional experience that comes with displacement, where they feel their vulnerabilities being not being tackled. And of course, this comes with the aspect of them being ridiculed, being mocked. I have a session in the later on where I'm going to present on the positive masculinity in the refugee setting, where you find the pressure because women have taken up the additional roles and the providers of the family. Men, the position of men feel questions, and sometimes when they are not able to provide, the only way they can resort to portray their kind of masculinities for them to, some of them resort to being violent because they want to still prove that they are the men. And this comes with a lot of economic stress where leading to those kind of frustrations meant to be more violent. And of course, them being reminded about their role, not being able to provide, their inability to do this, it feels like an insult. And once my position is kind of questioned, I will defend myself, and you find men trying to resort to violence as a way of solving their issues. But of course, it presents the other options, the negative coping mechanisms that you see resorting to drinking because they are not being able to do what they are really supposed to do. And of course, comes along with the issues around mental health and the rate of suicide. Of course, many of us know the number of men who try to commit suicide because of the frustration, because their inability to fit into the setting where they are not able to demonstrate their position as real men. It's a big challenge, and you find the need, the importance for us to really work around the positive form of masculinity, where we mobilize some of these men to come forward so that we are able to have a conversation to define what masculinity is, define what a real man is, to have that kind of safe space where we're able to look at alternative ways of demonstrating, manifesting masculinity, where we're able to really understand the vulnerabilities and also bring the support structures that are in place for them to feel the pinch. And of course, but of course, like other presenters mentioned, of course, you know, it's a kind of setting where a lot is being questioned when you look at what masculinity really is, and men trying to, the pressure to conform to that hegemonic, the dominant form of masculinity comes along. But also when you look at the subordinate, the gay, the LGBT, where they don't have that space to come out, and it's a big challenge. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ronan. And I think it's what you say resonates a lot, and I think it's coming to that level where gender relations and more equality maybe is seen as benefiting both. That it's not men always feeling the pressure and not feeling that they can in a way meet the expectations of the community around them, of both men and women. Thank you a lot. We will be able to go a little bit over time, and if you have questions, you're welcome to post questions in the chat, and then we can bring some of those questions back to the panelists, as well as, of course, express your reactions or opinions to what we're saying. But thank you so much. Now I have the fourth panelist, which is Ms. Miangali Randramchenon from the Sonke Gender Justice. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Sorry. The question that we have is, why should there be increased investments in programs that promote positive masculinity in humanitarian settings? So over to you for Miangali for a brief intervention, and thank you for responding to the question.
Thank you, moderator. Good day, everyone. I would like to start my intervention by explaining poverty, because when you talk about humanitarian settings, we talk about human beings, and somehow it can be related to poverty. So if we identify that extremely poor people or those without basic assets, or even when basic assets are available, they do not generate sufficient returns to meet basic human needs. However, extreme poverty cannot be solved by simply providing basic assets. Though important, it is not necessarily sustainable or sufficient. In addition, the causes, maintainers, and obstacles that prevent people from escaping extreme poverty need to be considered. So, let's recognize gender as the fundamental organizing principle of societies, and therefore an issue that underpins all other inequalities. So addressing gender inequality involves transforming unequal power relations between men and women, boys and girls, and challenging the underlying structures that perpetuate inequalities. We all know that, and some of the panelists has already said it, that men typically hold the power and control within the dominant patriarchal society, so they are often enforcers or perpetrators of gender inequality and gender violence. As such, men have a critical role to play in creating a more equitable system at national, community, and household level by relinquishing this power and making space for women to empower themselves. So I would say that investing in programs that promote positive masculinity in humanitarian settings is to help generation of men learn healthy behaviors and then develop more robust communities. So we can aim for successful outcomes in our programs, but if we design and implement programs that aim to achieve these goals without a gender lens, then we are not likely to achieve positive and sustainable results that will affect extreme poverty.
Thank you so much, Miangali. And I also for linking the poverty, humanitarian crisis, and the desperation of people, basically, of the communities, and again, what that means for the underlying inequality and having to shifting those power dimensions in such situations. We have a last panelist, and that's Miss Fatima Khamis Saeed, who is talking to us on behalf of COFEM. She's a women's rights activist in Pakistan. And the question we have for you, I'm happy to see you on your camera, is, oh, it's a long question. One of the biggest fears often expressed by feminist organizations of scaling up funding and programs for men and boys is the risk of disrupting funding for services that are already underfunded, that target women and girls, and shifting the risk of shifting focus away from women and girls to kind of too much over to the side of men and boys. What is your take, and how do you keep accountability to women and girls and to women's rights organizations and working with men and boys to prevent and respond to gender-based violence? So over to you for a quick intervention, and thank you for joining us from Pakistan.
Of course, thank you, Astrid. I know we're running short of time, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. With regard to the first concern, one often expressed by feminists about scaling up funding for programs for men and boys, and how what are the potential harms for programming to address violence against women and girls. So we all know that GBV as an area of work is generally quite underfunded, and the need, there is a huge need to address, to spend more on to address the needs of women and girls. Limited funding for all protection needs can contribute to a sense of competition between subsectors for resources and attention. So we feel that the answer really is to dedicate new funding in the field of prevention, mitigation, and response to violence against men and boys. It shouldn't be, anybody working in funding for GBV work should be very careful that no fund should be diverted for work focused on addressing violence against women to other ends, and a new stream of funding should be carved out to provide services to male survivors of violence. Secondly, it is essential that all programming should recognize the different drivers and impacts of different types of violence, and insist on specialized programming services and responses to meet the needs of women and girls as distinct from those of men and boys. Regarding your second question on how to keep accountability to women and girls when working with men and boys to prevent GBV in humanitarian and development settings, I think that question has already been addressed to some extent by some of my other fellow presenters. But I would just like to highlight three main streams. First, that we should focus on overcoming structural gender inequality rather than trying to change the views of individual men. There is a tendency to divert back to the experiences of male victims and to drift towards male priorities, which reflects the patriarchal tendency of institutions. So the space that has been carved out to reflect on GBV is the process of decades of hard work of women's rights activists. So that space should be focused on understanding and paying attention to the violence that women and girls face, and should not be crowded with multiple forms of violence deemed to have any sort of gender dimension. It should focus on structural, systemic gender discrimination and inequality, and center around the lived experiences of women and girls. And when we talk about the lived experiences of women and girls, which is another very important theme to keep in mind when you're talking about how to actually practice accountability to women and girls when working on male engagement work for GBV, there is a need to treat women and girls as individuals deserving of full human rights, and not just in their roles as mothers or wives or daughters. And it should center around the lived experiences of women, and again, not take away from the lot of blood and sweat of women's rights activists that has been focused on getting attention to women's experiences of GBV over many years. Lastly, when you talk about accountability to women and girls in male engagement programming, what is the role of male allies? A lot has been said about this, but I'll just touch on a couple of themes. There is a need for male allies to be guided by and accountable to women at all levels, from the individual through to the organizational and structural. When male allies do not follow or engage with women-led GBV efforts, or worse, assume leadership themselves, they perpetuate gender inequality, the very problem they aim to address. And while self-reflection is important in itself, individual reflection is not enough to ensure accountability to women. This must also happen at an organizational and structural level. So what does this mean in practice? It means that male allies need to make a conscious effort to ensure that the burden to practice accountability doesn't just fall on women and girl-led organizations, and that essentially the process of cleaning up without proactive action from the other side, the effort isn't just made from women's rights organizations and women's rights activists. In a similar vein, male allies should not detract from the limited spaces for women's leadership and decision-making. And for organizations engaging men in GBV work to be truly accountable, there must be consistent critical action, evaluation, and self-reflection, as well as the support of and bridge building with women's rights movements to truly enact broader structural change. And women's voices must remain the focus of male-led GBV work. So those are just a few thoughts that I wanted to share, and I'll hand it back over to you, Astrid.
Thank you so much, Fatima. And also for articulating that very deep concern within the community that when we open up for engagement of men as allies and being more holistic in how we see needs, that we also need to make sure that we bring in more voices, more allies, more funding, more programming, and that, of course, our accountability to women and girls also remains very much at the center. Laureen, I think you have an overview of some of the questions in the chat. Do you want to read out a question, or how do we proceed? Looking at the time. It would be good to have one or two questions now before we end, no?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Astrid. Anastasia Olambo is asking, what is the broader theory of change on engaging men and boys? What is the broader theory of change on engaging men and boys? I'm not sure which of our panelists is going to take that, but yes, that is a question that's been posed to us.
And that's not a small question. That's a big one. We could spend hours on it, and if we have a better collective understanding of that at the end of the day, I think it would be wonderful. I think it's such a big question, exact. So, Madame Aziza, if you would like to come in and attempt to respond to the question, you're very welcome.
Merci beaucoup pour la parole. Donc, je disais que c'est une question très importante parce qu'on peut effectivement se questionner pourquoi on va maintenant se focaliser sur les hommes alors que nous savons que la question touche beaucoup plus les femmes en tant que survivantes. Mais travailler avec les hommes nous aide à nous questionner et à questionner aussi les hommes sur et analyser de manière critique les questions d'inégalité Et à ce niveau-là, lorsque on discute et on questionne avec les hommes, on a l'opportunité maintenant de non seulement réduire les violences basées sur les genres, parce qu'ils vont prendre conscience de ça, mais aussi assurer le rétablissement physique, psychique, médical, y compris et des hommes et des femmes. Parce que une autre théorie sous-jacente, c'est que il y a d'abord les questions de socialisation qui permettent à ce que les hommes se comportent ou certains hommes se comportent de X ou Y manière, notamment des questions de masculinité hégémonique, mais il y a aussi des blessures internes des hommes qui font à ce que leur réaction à ces blessures soit un certain comportement, notamment de violence. Alors, travailler avec les hommes va permettre de conscientiser ces derniers sur les conséquences de ce qui leur arrive d'abord et aussi de ce qui arrive dans la communauté et plus précisément aux femmes. Et ensuite, de promouvoir la justice sociale. Donc, moi, je pense que travailler avec les hommes, c'est une opportunité de questionner et d'analyser de manière critique ces relations d'inégalité, de voir la responsabilité de chacun à différents niveaux. Et ensuite, après cette prise de conscience, peut-être un processus de travail sur soi et de guérison, on va aboutir à cette question de justice sociale. Voilà un peu comment je peux répondre à cette question.
Thank you, Aziza. I think that was very well articulated. I don't know. I have a hand up from Ronald Ogal, so I assume you would also like to respond to the same question before we move to the next. Please
Yes,
go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to respond to the question. I think for us, ultimately, what we want to see is a society where men, women, boys, and girls live in a gender equitable relationship, and of course, a life that is free from violence. Thank you.
Thank you for that aspiration and vision. And certainly. And Ms. Fatima, do you also want to respond? You have
I
your
just
hand.
wanted to quickly respond to one question to me in the comments regarding how have the male allies been supported to promote accountability. I just want to say that it's really the key takeaway from this discussion is that it is for male allies. To be a true ally, you need to do some self-reflection and critical self-reflection and think about how you are supporting rather than getting support from expecting support from women's rights activists, and think about how you are helping them in the cause to address violence against women, which is because a true male ally will seek to address the power imbalance which inherently favors men, and apply that power-based analysis lens towards their own circle to see how the privilege that they exercise, how can they use that privilege to help feminist activists and women's rights activists. So it is not so much about how male allies can be supported by women's rights organization as it is about how they can use whatever privilege they have to ensure that space is not taken from women's work.
Thank you, Fatima. I also see one more question in the chat. I mean, there's a lot of things we could discuss, but it's around the funding. Whether we now go out and seek new funding, etc., and who would fund. I don't know if one of the panelists would like to have a go, and then I think we will have to end the session. I'm looking at Lorraine for her inputs on, because it is good to discuss, right? This is also why we are here, to actually have a more dynamic discussion. Did anyone want to respond to the question around funding? No, I think just as a general, where we sit in the AOR, what we would like to see is that I think there's thinking of what was said earlier around accountability to women and how to balance. And I think there needs to be a kind of good reflection on what are the services that, with a tweak in terms of entry points or in terms of our own attitudes to males, you might not need always to have separate programs. There are also things we can do to improve inclusion within what we're doing, and I think it's important to get that balance right, so that we don't end up having sort of separate programs where we compete for resources, so that's really thought through. And then, yes, there are, of course, the whole male engagement and prevention. I think it needs to be linked together, but there is a cost to it. I see a hand up. Maria Gorti, I think last question before we end.
It is not a question, but it is a comment on the issue of the funding. Unfortunately, I'm Muawiyah from Sudan, working for the IRC. Most of our, whenever we have a project, we say GBV is cross-cutting. But how much do we allocate for the issue of the GBV? Sometimes it's very minimal. If the project is water and sanitation, even if it is health, even if it is maternal health project, when it comes to the issue of GBV as cross-cutting, we only try to address gender in terms of, we have health committee, 50% are males and 50% are females, and I think this is not enough. I think we need to invest a lot in women empowerment. If we speak about our case in Sudan, for example, Sudanese women got the right to vote and elect in 1951. And in 1965, we had a woman in the parliament, and she succeeded to fulfill the issue of equal wage for equal work. But now we are diving down because we are not empowering women, because most of the women here in Sudan, they don't know their rights, and even they don't know that they are victims of GBV unless somebody is telling them that. So I think in our projects, we need to expand or to fundraise for the issue of GBV, to fundraise for the issue of engaging boys and men in the issue of gender equality. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to add on that. I think within the humanitarian community, what we see as in the AOR is that GBV actors actually are not ambitious enough in how much we ask. So there's one issue around GBV being less funded than other protection sectors, but we're also maybe not asking for enough, like we're not putting the needs out there and being ambitious enough on what the actual cost is. And I also think in terms of funding and costs, there's also an advocacy to be done with MHPSS actors, with health actors, with protection actors. It's not only the responsibility of GBV responders, right? It's a broader responsibility. So we also need other clusters and other actors to step up and integrate these needs into their programs. I'm going to hand over with that, I think, to Lorraine to explain now whether there's a very short break or not and how to rejoin. Thank you so much, everyone. It was a pleasure, and I've learned so much, and I could go on forever, but I will not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Astrid, and thank you very much to all the roundtable participants and everyone who contributed to these one way or the other in the chat box with your questions, with your suggestions, with your telling us your experiences of what it is you're doing in your different lines of work. All this is extremely valuable. And please, even as the sessions continue, we may not be able to accommodate all your questions, all your observations in the plenary, but we encourage you to keep up the active discussion in the chats. Now, we have come to the point where we are about to take a break. I don't know what part of the world you are, but here in Nairobi, it is extremely cold, and I could do with a cup of tea. I don't know about which part of the world you're in and what time it is, but before we take the break, please allow me to speak about what the next session entails. So according to our programs, we were supposed to have a presentation on the outcomes of the Men Engage Ubuntu Symposium. I'm afraid that won't be possible for now, and we have removed that session, which means that we will be heading into plenary sessions at some point after the break. And there are 3 plenary sessions that you can join, and each of them covers different aspects of our work that you will see according to the program. So the first session looks at positive masculinity in a refugee context with a case study from Uganda and learning from implementing engaging men in accountable practice. The second session, Astrid, my French is terrible. Perhaps you could tell us what the first session is about, the first presentation.
You want me to translate what the second session is about?
Yes, the session 2 link. The first presentation is in French and my Francais is not very good.
So it's about the, I'm looking at it now. It's the community-based psychosocial approach, l'approche psychosociale communautaire, in how to engage men and boys in the fight against GBV. And it's with Aziza, who you just also met.
Thank you. And then we will have a second presentation on lessons learned. On lessons learned from engaging men in the Shikira program in Rwanda. Then we'll have the third session link is around transforming masculinities, where we will get to hear from Tearfund's approach to gender equality. And we will also have a presentation from Ethiopia on a culture-sensitive and faith-informed research and intervention program to men to respond to domestic violence. So there are 3 sessions, and we will be asking you to join the 3 sessions. As I said, a good number of us are not very familiar with WebEx, or we are finding our way around WebEx. So the IT modalities of that and how to go about that, I am going to ask Gideon to come and speak to us on how we will do that. Before you do that, I will ask that we take a very short break in the interest of time. And Gideon, please come and tell us the modalities, and then I will be able to confirm the duration of the break. Gideon, please, over to you.
Thank you very much, Lorraine. So I believe that everyone received the agenda of this meeting, so which I am presenting right now. It's appearing on your screens. We will end this particular session, and everyone will be required to join a session of their preference using the links within the agenda. As you can see on my screen, we have the 3 session links. So whichever session you prefer, you will click on the link and join the sessions. Then after the parallel sessions, you will use the same agenda to join back to the main session. The main session link is at the top of the agenda. In case of anything, please do not be afraid to put it in the chat, and we'll be happy to assist. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gideon. So I am reminded that we actually had 3 sessions, and we had 3 presentations in the first session, and the third one is on GBV risk mitigation by UNICEF Madagascar. So a little bit again, just before we break for the session, allow me to speak on the different languages that are available. There will be translation sessions there will be translation services in each session. And in the first session, we're going to have the 3 languages that we have been interacting with. That is English, French, Portuguese, but we will also be having Arabic as well. In the second session, we will have, again, English, French, Arabic, but in the second session, we'll also be provided with Spanish translation. In session 3, we will have French, English, and Arabic translation services. So allow us to take 10-minute break. after which, please, in the 10-minute break, go grab yourself a cup of coffee, grab yourself a cup of tea, stretch, and please do not leave the session entirely. Do not go away. We still have a lot of exciting conversations for the rest of the day, and then we will come back to proceed to the next session. Thank you very much. Enjoy the break.
ولو ناسنا الاجتماع ما يخش لي كله والله ما الا اطلع من داك مش داك لكن لذيذ يا اخي ما بيطلع والله symposium on gender transformative approaches for engaging men and boys in GBV prevention. ايوه أيوة. The regional GBV working group for East and South Africa. ما بتفات والله. حتى انا عملت لي مداخله كده عجبتني انا براي كده
Hi, everyone. I think to go into the parallel sessions, if you can go back to the agenda that you have received, do you all have the agendas? And you will find the link to the different sessions. And then, so you go out of the plenary and then you go back into those links. If you don't have the agenda with the links, then UNHCR has promised to copy the links into the chat. But that's what's happening. You will need to go into either the agenda, and if you have the agenda, then there's a session 1 link, a session 2 link, a session 3 link that you can choose. And then you have to close, go out of the plenary, so you are not in two meetings at the same time. Will be very confusing. Is that clear? You need the link in the. I have not seen the link. If you don't have the links in the invite, then I suggest you wait here till we find the links. Let me see if I can find them for the organization. In any case, don't leave us, please. I'll try to find them and put them up. Are you finding the links, or you still need the links? Okay. So the sessions have started. I shared the one for number 1. I'll try to find you the number 2 in my agenda.
Astrid,
Yes.
the UN
Sorry, I don't hear you. I heard you in the beginning and then you were lost.
Sorry, I'm saying here the tech team have shared this in the chat that we can
They have?
keep sharing them. Yes, they have. I can see them.
You can see them all? Okay.
But I'm just
Then
reposting them again in case people have lost them, so to speak, or can't find them, so to speak. But all the 3 sessions have been shared.
so the links are in the chat and everyone will need to close go out of the plenary to go into those parallel sessions that have started. Right? Because we still have 180 people in the plenary. And I think so those of you who want to be part of the parallel sessions that I think are very interesting, that's where I would now focus, because it allows you to go more in depth and actually have more, make it more real, all these discussions. If everyone in the plenary can go into the links that are found in the chat, or the agenda that was sent. In the agenda, you have the links, and then you choose the link where you want to go, and you go out. You press the red button to get out of this session. Lorraine? Tell me if I'm not saying the right thing. I'm just alarmed that we still 160 people here, and less people in the parallel sessions.
No, you are saying the right thing. We all have to exit the plenary and go to the 3 sessions. You choose which session you want to participate in. And for you to, when you go to that session, you have to exit this plenary. So you have to switch off the red button, and then you go and then you move on to the other. You click onto the other plenary, the session, the parallel session, and you exit this plenary session. So there are sort of multiple processes involved.
Exactly.
Yes.
You'll get there. No,
Yes.
and if you take the links in the agenda, it's easier because you can just go out of here and go into the agenda links. Otherwise, if you use the links in the chats, you get direct access to the new meeting, but then you need to go back and close this one afterwards.
Oh, and Adish is very kindly sending the agenda to everyone, which will probably make things a little easier as well. Thank you very much, Adish. So you click to the session you prefer to go to, and you exit this plenary session. Then you join the new session.
And if you don't want to go to the 1 hour of parallel sessions, in principle, you can just stay waiting in the plenary room, and then we will come back here. So that's another way, just waiting till the discussions have happened. But I do think you're missing out if you don't go to the parallel session. Because the meeting will resume in this room in around 45 minutes to 1 hour. So if you're saying, I see a question in the chat, where are we? So you are still in the plenary, and there are now 3 parallel sessions. So either you wait in the plenary because you don't have interest or time to go into the parallel sessions, which I think are very interesting, and they are starting now. Or you need to follow the link in the chat, or take the agenda that Adish just sent to you. And on the agenda, you actually also have the links at the top, and you press, you go out from here and you press on the links as long as you have the agenda. And then you will rejoin here after the parallel sessions. So you're in both sessions. On my computer, if I go to the side where there's a side where you have the icon of the WebEx, and there, when you come close to it, you can see that you're in two meetings because you have two screens opening it potentially. And there you need to go back to and take out the plenary one and close it with the red button. If you have the agenda, you can also close both and then just go back in with the link in the agenda. I'm sorry that it is a bit complicated because you're not directed automatically. Because this screen now is still the plenary. So if you want to join, you need to find the links in the agenda or in the chat. If you do it by the agenda, you can just go out of the plenary and then you are sure you're only in one meeting. Otherwise, you do it in the chat, but then you do need to go to the icon and see that there are two possible interfaces of WebEx, and you need to go out with the red button from the plenary. So I'll repeat again to try to make sure we guide you as well as possible. So in probably 45 minutes to an hour, because I think there will be some adjustments because we're a bit late, we will resume in the plenary here. Now they've started breakout groups or parallel sessions. And to access those parallel sessions, you need to, the best way is to go to the agenda, check your inbox. You should have received the agenda from Adish Modho. And in the agenda, you can just press the link that you're interested in. Otherwise, you can also use the link in the chat, but then you need to also make sure you exit this meeting once you've joined the other. And if you prefer, because there are other things happening and you just want to wait in a way in the plenary while the others are in the breakout, then we will resume here automatically for the plenary discussion. And I can see we have 40, 38, 95 participants in the different sessions. So maybe some of you have already joined and you just need to exit from here. And again, the links are in the chat. If you have any problems accessing, you can send me a chat. So now we received a message saying they will end the plenary because it makes so much echo, because some of you are in both meetings and haven't managed to go out. So the plenary will end here, but it means you need to go back using the same link after the breakout sessions. And please try to join the parallel sessions, either using the agenda that was sent to you by email. That's probably the easiest way. or by using the link. So the news is you will not be able to just stay here and resume. You need to either go to one of the links in the chat or in the agenda and then close. This main session will be closed and then it will resume afterwards. Et pour la traduction, je ne sais pas s'il y a des gens qui ne me comprennent pas, je ne sais pas si les traducteurs sont encore avec nous. Alors, ce qu'il faut faire maintenant, c'est ils vont vouloir fermer cette pièce principale, hein, là où vous êtes maintenant, parce que ça fait du bruit dans les sessions parallèles. Si vous voulez rentrer dans les sessions parallèles où il y a des présentations et des discussions maintenant, il faut soit choisir un lien dans le chat ou retourner vers l'agenda où vous pouvez choisir les liens et quelle présentation vous souhaiterez écouter ou où vous aimeriez participer. Parce que dans un petit moment, ils vont vouloir fermer. Ah, et maintenant, c'est moi qui est dans le lien 3. Alors, je vais sortir d'ici pour ne pas faire plus de bruit. Et Marine, I hope I leave them in your capable hands to guide.
Sorry, thank you. Yes, you're doing a great job of keeping everyone updated. Thanks. Please, participants, we are urging you to join one of the parallel sessions. Because of the technical difficulties, we may be forced to close this plenary session so that we avoid having an echo, because some of us are in the plenary session and we are in a parallel session, and that is causing echo and it is affecting conversations in the sessions, in the parallel sessions. So we are urging you, please, if you can check on the chat or in the programs that were emailed to you, you have the links to join all the parallel sessions. We are asking you to please select that. And when you join the parallel session, please exit this main plenary session. The plenary session has when you exit the plenary session, you exit by clicking on the red button with an X so that you are fully and solely in the parallel session. Does anyone have any inquiries on how to do that? Please put them in the chat and I'll be free to, I will repeat if I need to make the clarifications. I'm seeing EUTM from, sorry, I'm just going to, some of you are mailing me privately, so let me just respond to that. Participants, I'm afraid we're going to have to end the plenary session to allow for better coordination in the parallel sessions. So our IT person is going to end this link in a few minutes. Meanwhile, allow me to explain for the final time. For you, we are urging you to join the parallel sessions, which are ongoing at the moment. There are 3 parallel sessions as we speak. For those of you who are having difficulty finding the parallel sessions and how to access them, please note that in the chat, we have posted the links to the 3 parallel sessions. And each of them have been labeled, for example, session 1 link, and you have the link that you can click on. For those of us who prefer other means of joining the parallel sessions, if you check in your program, you will see that the program has provided links that you can click onto to join whichever parallel session you choose to participate in. And our colleague Adish has also posted the link, has posted the agenda for today, the full agenda, and the chat as well as a Google Doc. So if you want to access the links from your program agenda for the day, you can click on that and you will find the program agenda, and you can click on the link to the parallel session there. We are urging you all to please join each of the parallel sessions because we are about to close this plenary session as we are having technical difficulties with this session running and the parallel sessions running. Kindly please endeavor to join the parallel sessions. Are saying you are unable to join because you want to be sent the agendas via email. Please just put your email address there and we will email you the program. If you're required to be emailed to the program, please put your email in the chat box and we will forward it to you. team, and you can end the session now. And I'm going to send the program to all the people who've given me their emails. I'm forwarding you the program as we speak. Please be patient. Thank you. We come back to plenary at 12:40. And IT team, you can end the session now.